Urban American White Pelicans eating mosquitofish. This study started with a simple question. What are the American white pelicans feeding on at an urban lake with apparently low numbers of usual fish prey and multiple birdfish predator competitors? I'll start with this little poem. A wonderful bird is the pelican. His beak can hold more than his belly can. He can hold in his beak enough food for a week, but I'll be darned if I know how the hell it can. I think you're going to learn a little bit about pelicans. This urban lake I'm studying is at Mason Regional Park in Irvine, Orange County, California. Here's a downloadable map showing the park, especially the western part, and the lake of about 9 acres in size, where my subjects were studied. From eBird, and I'm going to show you the addresses for all the websites I use in the show notes and on the slides. From eBird, an indication of the distribution of pelicans over 2 years, 2024 upper and partial 2025 lower at Mason Regional Park. 2 pelican species occur in our area. The brown pelican is uncommon and is mainly found on coastal water. In fact, that little indication is my November 4th submittal for brown pelicans. And here's what it looked like. A close-up of the juvenile brown pelican stayed at Mason for about 24 hours. The rest of this video will discuss American white pelicans. I'm going to abbreviate that AWPE. I found the numbers of American white pelicans on the Mason Lake can vary considerably. Here's a video of a large influx on September 25th, 2025. We'll start that going. Some feeding behavior going on, but the flock just basically came in. There are cormorants in the flock as well. We're going to break down the feeding behavior later. They're still flying in. The pelicans do not stay overnight at Mason Lake. There are at least 38 birds on this video. My pelican numbers for 13 days in November 2025 at Mason Park Lake ranged from 1 to 13 individuals. The high happened on a rainy day. The median and mode pelican lake presence was 2. Might have been the same 2 each day that flew in. AMHE might be coming to forage here during the day from the nearby San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary, about 3,500 feet from the loafing island that's at the wildlife sanctuary, or from San Diego Creek that's even closer. The pelicans forage at Mason near the lake shore and rarely in the middle lake areas of Mason Lake. I want to show you here the San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary, one of the ponds with an island and a bunch of loafing pelican flock that were there that day. This was taken on November 23rd. Also, there are cormorants there, possibly from the roosting tree at Mason Park. I'm going to show you diet studies for the white pelican from summer areas, and these are references that I used. I will also repeat these in the show notes. And those 2 references, and if I can summarize them, pelican diet analysis is often based on recently fed chicks on the breeding ground who regurgitate their food when disturbed. Their main food, fed from adults, was a variety of fish species, salamanders, adults and larvae, and crayfish. And there's a quote I'll give you from one of the cited papers that white pelicans mostly consume the susceptible bottom-dwelling species in water less than 1 meter deep, or prey within 1 meter of the surface of deep water. Mason is probably about 4 feet deep, so they may not be able to quite reach the bottom unless they really go underwater, at least the neck and head area. We'll see that. Potential fish prey for white pelicans at San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary. Found a paper on this. And there are a lot of fish species in the ponds, including bluegill, carp, some minnows, green sunfish, bass, mosquitofish, silversides, red shiner. I don't know what the density of the populations are, but you wonder why the white pelicans are coming over to Mason when they have this fish variety at the sanctuary. Good diversity. So, does Mason Lake have a variety of fish species, salamanders or crayfish? What other fish predators have I seen at Mason? What can I document? So let's look at the potential prey. And I back up all of this top kind of table with actual photography. So yes, there are bullfrogs and tadpoles. Mason, a number of birds feed on it. There was a small carp that a pied-billed grebe got, and then a more recent green sunfish. There was 4 months between those two observations. Snowy egrets feed on western mosquitofish, and I saw a grebe eat a crayfish once, brought it up. So other fish predators at Mason, well, there are a lot of them: great egret, great blue heron, black skimmer, diving ducks, eared grebe, etc. So it's an active sort of ecosystem, And over the last 6 months, this is all what I documented. I don't think there's that much prey species at the lake, except actually mosquitofish, even though I always had my camera at hand to record the events. A recent fish capture by pied-billed grebes, what looks like a green sunfish. Could be wrong on that. The hunter is being chased by another grebe. This was the second medium-sized fish in over 5 months of lake observations that I saw a pied-billed grebe or any other Mason Lake predator catch. The second grebe followed and chased the first, both on the surface and underwater. Eventually, when they both went underwater, they came up without the sunfish. It looks like it escaped. Remember this because about 8 minutes later, I filmed something that I will speculate about later in this video. That's why I'm going into more detail on that recent sunfish catch. So let's look at Mason Park Lake history, past history, because presently it doesn't look like there's that much medium fish in the lake. On a fishing forum at bdoutdoors.com, there was a discussion in March of 2010, that's 15 years ago, on the poor fishing possibilities at Mason Park Lake. They discussed that the lake had a number of fish die-offs, the latest in about 2004, 6 years earlier. It was restocked with channel cats. It was pointed out that the water was reclaimed water with a solid green or ochre color. That's still true today. A review of the wildlife of the area from another reference in 2007 stated the lake is stocked with fish. I'll show you that reference citation. So back to the 2010 posts. One post indicated that Mason Rangers told this person that the only fish that are in there are probably exotics that folks with aquariums put in. That's basically where all the turtles came from. People threw them in the lake, which is illegal. An extended post by a person who worked on the lake under a county contract indicated the maximum water depth was, quote, was like 4 feet all over. That's more than a meter. The bottom was solid organic ooze. There's lots of Canada geese that come here and lots of coots, and they generate a lot of organic material. He indicated the lake is loaded with bullheads and die-offs happen there, quote, all the time. Don't know if that still occurs. The fountain there is aerating the water. Also, the individual said he had talked to local fishermen who said they had brought fish over from Lake Paris years ago. Remember, this was the discussion in 2010. Locals I've recently talked to indicated the lake was once the site of summer fishing for children, but that activity was dropped. And an AI overview that I just did this week shows, quote, that fishing is not permitted at William R. Mason Regional Park. Swimming, wading, and fishing are prohibited in the lake and creek. I think they're worried about this reclaimed water, and there are signs all over the place saying don't drink the water, and obviously if you don't want to drink the water, there's no reason why you need to go in there and swim and wade. The lake does have a good population of western mosquitofish, so let's talk about these. And this is, I think, from an AI. Was asking a question on mosquitofish, a primary food source for any pelican species. And it says that mosquitofish are not a primary or major food source for any pelican species. Pelicans are opportunistic feeders whose diet primarily consists of the most abundant small schooling fish species available in the local environment. And they don't list mosquitofish there. None of those fish are at Mason Park. While mosquitofish are small enough to be consumed by pelicans and may occasionally be eaten if present in the shallow waters where pelicans forage, their small size and typical availability of larger schooling fish mean they do not form the bulk of any pelican's diet. So, spoiler alert, that's not true. Mason's pelicans that forage there depend highly on mosquitofish. So here are some mosquitofish. I'll play this little video. Looking down from the concrete structure on the southwest part of the lake, you notice how turbid the water is. This is an AI overview of western mosquitofish showing that the females can get up to 2.5 to 3 inches. I don't think we've seen any that large at Mason. Some more information. I also gives me an opportunity to acknowledge Carol Paquette, also provided me with background material on this fish species. I also contacted the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District about any current stocking of western mosquitofish at Mason Lake and received the following from the biologist Michael Saba, who I thank for his input. I think I did this about November 14th, 2025. And he indicated that there are no records of mosquitofish stocking in Mason Lake within the last 7 years. Prior to that time frame, it is probable, quote, / likely, that mosquitofish was stocked by our district in those areas for the management of immature mosquitoes. Mosquitofish are hardy, highly adaptable, and prolific. So the mosquitofish you've observed there at present are most likely the descendants of previous stocking. So let's turn our attention to the white pelicans' Mason Park social behavior and flock synchronization. If multiple pelicans occur in the lake, they may form a flock with synchronized feeding and cooperative herding of prey. Members of groups of 2 to 6 birds, this is from a reference from Anderson, 1991, members of groups of 2 to 6 birds caught significantly more fish than single birds or those in large groups. So there's an advantage to synchronize your feeding in these groups. Mason Park's foraging behavior. White pelicans do not dive for prey, unlike brown pelicans. Instead, from the surface, they show dipping or striking or probing behavior with their large bill. The terminology differs per researcher and is usually not defined. It was difficult to figure out what they were talking about. I do see two different subsurface foraging behavior at Mason, and we'll show videos of both. If pelicans capture a food item, when they raise their bills, they go through a swallowing sequence. Per previous pelican studies, swallowing is considered proof that a prey item was captured, even though you don't see the prey, in some cases, in the bill. And the Anderson 1999 paper is based upon his thesis. I'm showing you where you can actually get that information. So Mason Park Lake, and let's look at dipping or probing. Let's figure out maybe what those terms mean. So how to apply these two terms from the literature? Probing, I saw the bill is closed when it's put into the lake water. Dipping, well, I see on October 1st, 2025, the Mason Park White Pelican flock members tip headfirst into the water with closed bill until their head and part of their neck goes completely underwater. The wings of the bird elevate, as does the tail go up. The submerged bill tip just might be close enough to the bottom of the Mason Park Lake. I want to show you this in a second. Large flocks of feeding white pelicans in Mason Lake are uncommon. Dipping might be for a large, compact flock behavior. So let me show you this. We'll start this going. Look at that, they're all synchronized. We'll see that in a couple of times. They're getting food, obviously. Getting their head down. Must be good food in that corner. Head's completely underwater, and part of the neck is too. Now, there's a term called striking. So let's look at possible white pelicans striking for their food. I use striking to describe when the pelican rests its head on its back as it approaches a foraging area. It then rapidly extends its neck and with an open mouth slices into the water. The strike samples the upper water column and the head ends up immersed just up to the eyes. So that's as far down as it's going to go with its neck and head. The gula pouch may fill with water and available prey. I'm going to show you two birds. They synchronized feeding from November 9th. There they go, in attack mode. Now they're filling their gula pouch. Deflate it, or push out water actually, and then they go through a swallowing sequence. I'm going to do that one more time for you. In fact, I'm going to slow that up in slow motion, how they enter the water. I'm going to tilt their head, and then the gula pouch the water is drained out of it. And now this is going to be in 1/8 speed, coming toward you. This will show how the bill enters the water. Kind of tilts its head, and then it will deflate that pouch, bringing water into it, and then draining that water. A lot of fascinating behaviors that this bird is showing. Remember, this is at 1/8 speed. All right, it looks like it stopped right there. And looking from the bridge at Mason down on the water, where the pelicans are right beneath me, it shows a full gula pouch. This is on the lower right, by the way, is the second pelican. The next video shows that the October 1st, 2025 flock, when more spread out, switches to striking. I'll play this video. You see they're doing striking. Same ones you saw doing the dipping. Let's do diet information at Mason by photography. Food studies once relied on collecting a sample of a species population and analyzing their stomach contents. That's rarely done today for a number of reasons. Instead, the least invasive thing I can do at Mason Regional Park without permits and, lots of administrative problems there, is to film pelicans during their feeding routines in the hope of seeing the items they trap. I think I get lucky sometimes when I do photography. But after viewing my pelican videos, I only documented one prey capture and saw some ambiguous items in the pelican's bill. August 17th. They ate a bullfrog. Maybe they ate a bullfrog. When I filmed the two segments you will see next, I saw the commotion of the white pelicans, but until I viewed my video, I did not see that the pelicans had trapped a bullfrog and apparently were fighting for it. I did not see if the bullfrog was actually eaten. In retrospect, I should have taken a lot more video. So let's start this going on August 17th, 2025. Cormorants are following them, and look, they're starting to. What's in the bill? It's actually a bullfrog. And now what they're going to do? These three are trying to get it. He has it now, but they must have to rearrange the bullfrog so it's swallowed easily. I don't think this is play behavior. And then again, a little bit later, they still have the bullfrog, these three, and throwing it up and down in the water. I assume that eventually one of them ate it. And then there were some unknown items. I'm going to show you something from September 26th and October 1st. So here's a frame. This is going to be a frame from a video. I got it so that I could see an open bill, and then there's some stuff there. Not sure what that stuff is. But later, I do know what that is. Let's look at October 1st. I'm going to show you one individual, a video frame from that, and then two more individuals' video frames from those. And so here are three video frames from the same individual. You can see there's something in the bill. There's water coming off the bill, and it's small. I don't know what that is at the time. And then here is the end of the flock on October 1st. These two seem to have hit a jackpot of some sort. On the left, we see again some stuff. Water is accumulating off of that. There must be some sort of dam there that accumulated water. And then the white pelican also next to it seems to have a large amount of prey. So most of my initial pelican field photography was taken with a Nikon B700 digital camera. This camera has a zoom to 40 power. I used it in bird mode and set the video at 60 frames per second and a resolution of 1920 by 1080. The camera was mostly handheld. The resulting sharpness of the image, however, as you saw, didn't allow me to figure out what the unknown objects were that I saw in the pelican's bill. It got really frustrated, so finally I thought about it, and then I switched to my Nikon P1000 camera and still photography. This zoom camera goes to 60 power, has better anti-vibration features, it's continuous shutter, which I used, and a photo resolution quite more than the B700. The images were taken handheld and without a flash. I started each photo segment aimed at the pelican's bill when it lifted its head from striking and filling its gular pouch, and just before it started its swallowing sequence. The images you will see next were captured from November 18th, 19th, and 20th, 2025. They likely explain what the previous unknown objects represented. So you're going to see some really neat photographs. And let's zoom in. November 20th. What is the pelican feeding on? It's feeding on mosquitofish. And somehow or other, it looks like there's water trapped there as well. Here's another one. What is it feeding on? It's feeding on a bunch of mosquitofish. In fact, there's some on the top of the bill, some later on. November 19th, a view from the back. November 20th, more mosquitofish. And a view looking straight down, there's some mosquitofish there as well. So of the over 1,000 images, remember I'm using a continuous shutter. Of the over 1,000 images taken on November 18th through 20th, 69 frames, 69 photos, show what looks like western mosquitofish in the pelican's bill. No other prey species were seen in the bill. Some images showed no objects inside the pelican's open bill. However, because of the way the photographs were taken during the swallowing sequence, I don't think they can be used to challenge the, quote, swallowing sequence is equal to one capture ingestion paradigm. You know, I don't quite trust that the swallowing always means that there's a capture. But that's what the literature shows. It's possible, and it is true. I have one puzzling set of image sequence from November 19th, and I want your help on this if you can. An object appears outside the bill of the pelican on the first image of the sequence, then is seen dropping down toward the water in the next photo in the sequence. What is it? It's not an artifact. It's not on the surface of the water. Is it a piece of a larger fish prey? I expect pelicans to swallow fish intact. These photos were taken about 8 to 9 minutes after I had observed those two grebes nearby fighting over the green sunfish shown previously in this video. That sunfish escaped. How do you explain these two photos? So here's the first one. This is a frame. I'm going to blow it up. That looks like mussel. And that, whatever it was, is falling toward the water surface there. So let's assume if it was part of the sunfish, but that's the only part of a fish, if it is part of a fish, that I saw in all of my photography. So let's compare the Mason Pelican strikes and swallowing statistics to those two summer foraging studies to find out how unusual things are at Mason Regional Park. So this is my present study. My numbers are based, I'll show you, on a limited sample. So I followed a single white pelican on November 16th for about 1 hour, generating 47 minutes of strikes and any subsequent swallowing behaviors on video. The video also contains times the pelican moved from one feeding area to another. I counted within that hour 161 strikes, 161 strikes from this single individual, of which 99 led to swallowing. So there's a 61% capture rate. Once the gular pouch was inflated, the pelican subsequently showed swallowing behavior. So some statistics: 161 over 47 minutes is 3.45 strikes per bird per minute. This is one bird. And then the capture for strike is 61%. What did the other two studies show? And I'll show you, first of all, a sequence here. 1 strike, swallow. 3 quick strikes, reject. Another strike, swallow. This one didn't inflate the gular pouch that much. Reject. Nothing. Nothing. And a full gular pouch inflation. And then swallow. So this is a paper by Blair and McMahon and Evans in, what's the date, 1992. The authors compared white pelicans' day versus night foraging, where they were in summer. They did mostly night foraging, white pelicans, in 1985 and 1986. They recorded during the day over 1,000 bill dippings without prey capture, and 140 bill dippings with prey capture, or 11% capture rate, compared to my 61%. And then let's look at Anderson, 1991. This is from Western Nevada. The previous paper was from a place in Canada. He compared foraging of groups of pelicans, including single birds. His strikes per minute per bird for a group of 1 was between 1 and 2. I had 3.45. His captures per strike per bird of a group of 1, that's what I was comparing it against, was 3.5% compared to mine 61%. So it's quite apparent that feeding on mosquito fish changes your foraging behavior. So my conclusion is that those American white pelicans that daily foraged at the edge of Mason Regional Park's lake fed mainly on western mosquitofish in fall 2025. Apparently, the population of other fish species in the lake from past stockings years ago is too low, or they are out of reach of the foraging pelicans to be a major food item. Many of my feeding photos show multiple mosquito fish captured with a single strike. Preying on these small fish by increasing strike activity is energetically rewarded by the high capture rate of groups of mosquito fish. And I marvel at the number of fish predators there are at Mason Regional Park. This photo, and it's not it's a real photo, not manipulated, shows a snow egret which often followed the feeding pelicans along the edge of the lake, feeding with them. Snow egrets, I know, feed on mosquito fish as well. So who would have thought that these two Mason Park species depend on the same food item but have very different capture behaviors? So I hope you enjoyed that. This is part of my Mason Regional Park YouTube Field Notes series. Here are the first 5 of them. Cormorant species, what they feed on. They also fed on the bullfrog. Snowy egrets interacting with cormorants and following them to feed on it. Pied-billed grebes. I have a picture of pied-billed grebes feeding on crayfish, feeding on apparently carp, etc. 6 through 11. Coyotes at Mason Park, turtles at Mason. The egrets, I have a picture of a night heron feeding on a bullfrog there. Crows, mobbing raptors, northern shoveler has an interesting behavior pattern when it feeds. And then, of course, number 12 is what you're looking at. So this is another of my JDW talks. I have YouTube talks on genealogy topics, well known for that actually, census research, Ellis Island, immigration, and naturalization. And I have much more talks on natural history topics, virtual birding field trips, optics. I'm very interested in optics and how you use binoculars and spotting scopes, California birds and Mason Park nature notes, and then some etc. YouTube videos that are of interest to me. So I hope you enjoy the outdoors of Orange County, California, and take a look at the white pelicans when they are at Mason Regional Park, and wonder about the lowly mosquitofish being a principal part of the food chain. And maybe the next time when you look at artificial intelligence, they'll get it right about mosquitofish and pelicans. Bye-bye.